You have probably had that feeling before. You mentioned something in conversation. Maybe you talked about planning a trip, or a specific product, or a health concern. And then later that day, an ad for exactly that thing appears on your phone. It feels like your phone is listening. Here's the truth, because this matters and it deserves a straight answer before we go any further. There's no verified, reproducible evidence that mainstream apps or smartphone platforms are activating your microphone to record ambient conversations for advertising purposes without your explicit consent. Researchers at Northeastern University spent a year testing 17,000 of the most popular Android apps specifically to find evidence of this. They did not find it. But here is what they did find. And here is what is actually happening. And why it is, in many ways, more invasive than a microphone ever could be. The phone is not listening to your conversations. It is doing something far more sophisticated. And the moment you understand the full picture of what your apps are actually collecting, the creepy coincidence of those ads starts making complete sense without requiring any secret microphone. Let us start with what your apps can actually read, beyond the obvious permissions you think about. When you install an app and it asks for microphone or camera access, you notice. You make a decision. You can say yes or deny. Android shows you a dialogue. The choice feels meaningful. But there is an entirely separate category of data collection happening on your Android device that requires no permissions dialog at all, because Android does not classify these as sensitive permissions. This is where the real story begins. Your phone contains multiple sensors that apps can read without asking you for explicit permission. The accelerometer measures the orientation and movement of your device in three-dimensional space. The gyroscope measures rotational velocity. The magnetometer detects magnetic fields. The barometer measures air pressure. The light sensor detects ambient brightness. Apps that want access to these sensors, in most cases, simply take it. No dialogue, no opt-in. Just access, running silently in the background. Your accelerometer alone knows a remarkable amount about your life. The way you hold your phone, while sitting on a couch, is measurably different from the way you hold it while walking, while driving, while at a desk, while in bed. The specific motion patterns associated with a morning commute, a gym workout, a church service, a late-night scroll, are all detectable through accelerometer data with surprisingly high accuracy. Research published by academic security groups has repeatedly demonstrated that accelerometer readings can be used to identify the websites you are browsing on your phone, even when that data is transmitted over an encrypted connection, simply by reading the subtle vibrations from the screen's touch interactions. The gyroscope adds another layer. Research from academic groups has demonstrated that gyroscope and accelerometer data combined can reconstruct spoken words through the vibrations your phone's speaker creates in the device chassis when someone is speaking nearby. The experiment known as EarSpy showed that it is possible to identify caller gender, emotional state, and even specific spoken words from ear speaker vibrations captured through the motion sensors without ever accessing the microphone. None of these sensor readings require a permission prompt on most Android versions. Now add location to this picture. Location is a declared permission, meaning you do have to grant it, but the specific ways apps use location access after you have granted it are far more aggressive than most users realize. With multiple apps active at the same time, it is not unusual for an individual mobile device to report its GPS location thousands of times each month. Think about what that actually represents in terms of behavioral data. A device that pings its location data thousands of times monthly produces a complete record of everywhere you went, how long you stayed, what time you arrived and departed, and what other locations you visited on the same day. From that data, an algorithm can infer whether you are religious, what your political views might be, what your health concerns are, what economic bracket you belong to, and who you spend time with. An entire industry of data brokers collects, packages, and sells personal information drawn from loyalty programs, public records, app permissions, and purchase histories. Most of these companies operate invisibly to consumers, yet build detailed profiles that advertisers use to find and reach specific audiences. When the ads feel like they know you, they often do, because a broker sold a file that describes you to a buyer you have never interacted with. This is the honest explanation for the eerie targeting that makes people believe their phone is listening. It is not audio surveillance. It is behavioral profiling through sensor data, location history, browsing patterns, purchase records, and cross-device fingerprinting, assembled into a detailed enough picture that an advertising algorithm can predict what you are likely to want before you have said a word about it to anyone. Now, let us talk about what apps can actually access with permissions you may have granted and forgotten, because this is where the privacy dashboard becomes genuinely important, and most Android users do not know it exists. On Android 12 and later, Google added a privacy dashboard to settings. In late 2024, Google rolled out an expanded 7-day history view through a Play system update. This dashboard gives you something you have never had before, a chronological log of every app that accessed your microphone, camera, or location, down to the timestamp of each access. Open your phone right now, go to Settings, tap Privacy Dashboard. What you see may surprise you. A user who recently did this on a current Pixel device documented finding 10 apps had accessed location data, 5 had touched the camera, and 2 had accessed the microphone. Some had no obvious reason to do any of this: a social app checking in at 3 a.m., a keyboard that activated the microphone, a game that turned on the camera. These are not necessarily nefarious. A keyboard that activates the microphone may be preparing for voice input you never actually used. A social app checking location at 3 a.m. may be updating a local discovery feed. But you do not know that unless you look. And until recently, you had no tool to look with. Tap the 3-dot menu in the privacy dashboard and choose Show 7 days. This gives you a week-long picture of permission access across your entire device. Look through it carefully, particularly for apps accessing the microphone or camera at times when you are not actively using them. When you find something that does not make sense, tap the entry and it takes you directly to that app's permission settings. You can change microphone access from Always Allow to Only While Using, or remove it entirely. Do this for every app that has microphone or camera access you have not thought about recently. While you are in Settings, go to Location, then App Permissions. Look at how many apps have all the time location access. For most apps on most phones, this number is far higher than it should be. Weather apps, food delivery apps, social apps, games. All the time location access means the app can read your GPS coordinates continuously in the background, building exactly the kind of movement profile described earlier. Change everything you can to while using, and for apps that do not genuinely need your location at all, remove the permission entirely. Now let us talk about the data collection you truly cannot stop, because honesty matters here, and some of this is simply unavoidable. Device fingerprinting combines passive signals like your browser version, screen resolution, installed fonts, hardware specifications, and system version to build a persistent identifier for your device. This technique does not require any permissions. It does not leave a trail on the privacy dashboard, and it is nearly impossible for most users to detect or reset. Advertisers use device fingerprints to recognize your device across multiple apps, websites, and even across other devices on the same network, correlating your phone's behavior with your laptop's browsing to build a unified profile. Nearly 50% of consumer data collected by companies is leveraged for personalized or targeted advertising. The remaining 50% supports risk modeling for insurance and credit, employment screening, identity verification, and sale to other data brokers for further aggregation. That second category is the one most people do not think about. The data being collected from your phone is not only being used to show you relevant ads for products you might buy, it is being used to build risk models that affect whether you are offered a loan and at what rate. Employment screening services purchase behavioral data. Insurance companies model risk partly based on location and behavioral patterns. Government intelligence agencies purchase commercially collected data to build profiles on individuals, a practice specifically noted by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in 2023 as posing significant privacy threats. Your phone is not just an advertising platform, it is a data collection infrastructure for an ecosystem of actors, with interests ranging from commercial to governmental, most of which you have never directly consented to interact with. So what can you actually do about it, practically and honestly? Start with the privacy dashboard and the location permissions, as described above. These are meaningful changes with real effects on what data is accessible. Revoking a social app's all-the-time location access does genuinely reduce the granularity of the location profile being built about you. Be very selective about which apps you grant microphone and camera access to. Verify in the privacy dashboard periodically that apps you thought had restricted access have not reset those permissions through updates. Some apps restore default permissions after major version updates, and you would not know unless you checked. Be skeptical of free apps that serve advertising, particularly games, utility apps, and weather apps. These categories have the strongest incentives to embed third-party data collection SDKs inside them because the user pays nothing in money, but the app monetizes through data sold to brokers. The SDK sitting inside a free flashlight app may be collecting more data than the flashlight functionality itself requires. Consider what you're actually handing over each time you see a permissions request and automatically tap Allow. That dialog is the only moment in the entire relationship where you have explicit, reversible control. Every tap of Allow is a decision that persists until you actively reverse it. The privacy dashboard now gives you the tool to review those past decisions systematically and maintain a realistic understanding of what is actually happening. The phone is not secretly listening to your conversations. The truth is more interesting and more complex than that. It is building a behavioral portrait of who you are from sensor data, location history, browsing patterns, and purchase records, assembling it into a Description detailed enough that an algorithm can predict what you want before you have said a word. That is not science fiction. That is the system that is already running on the device in your pocket right now. The question is whether you know it is there.